There's really not a lot of chemistry on this one. We had, like, not that I'm going to make you write out chemical pathways or anything, but we had chemistry in the carbon and in the nitrogen cycle. We will again when we do greenhouse gases, and y'all, those notes are very technical. Why is it not recording? Oh my gosh, is my car going to get hit by an asteroid today? Like, what? It's just everything is going wrong today. Every time I turn around, something else is going wrong. Huh? I don't have the slightest clue. Oh, I don't have the slightest clue. Alrighty, so it has been, it doesn't help the fact I've been since 2. All right, so I noticed some of you already answered the starter question. Where do fossil fuels come from? Don't tell me the ground, because then what?
Dead things.
So what kind of dead things? Okay, so plant matter is the swampy stuff. That's what makes coal. Do you know what makes oil and natural gas? Because it's not plants. You don't know? Okay, oil, which is used to make, and natural gas, which is used to make things like gasoline and propane and stuff, that actually comes from organisms like not the plants, but the little critters from the ocean, like the sea life that has been compacted. It still takes a long time. So approximately how long does this take? I don't know that one either. Yeah, a long time. Somewhere between 100 and 400 million years. So that's why fossil fuels are considered non-renewable, because we can't just plant coal and grow coal the way that we can trees. And I know trees still take, depending on the species, sometimes a couple dozen years to get to full maturity, but it's nothing compared to how much time it takes to make oil and petroleum or oil, whatever you want to call it, and natural gas. This really should not take us this long, just because there's so much shorter and there's really no chemistry behind it. I'm really going to try to shorten down the greenhouse gas one. It's long, it's a lot, it's a whole lot, and I'm not even doing every single greenhouse gas that exists. I'm focusing on the chemistry people. All they do is blow up my fire. All right, but a fuel, okay, it doesn't have to be a fossil fuel, but a fuel is something that is normally a hydrocarbon. Okay, it can have oxygen in it too, and it's going to provide some source of energy. Okay, the different types. Okay, it could be burned. Okay, not necessarily coal, but it could be wood, it could be burned. It can produce light. Okay, energy like our sun. It's a hydrogen bomb. That's nuclear fuel. And you're going to have a chemical change in order for this thing to release its energy, whatever it is, whether it's the simplest of the hydrocarbons, methane, or it's more complex like sugar. When you break the bonds, and let me see if I remember how to do this now. I don't remember. It's been so long. Let me look it up in sheet. I don't remember where the hydroxides go. Oh, come on, work. Patience today. So CH2OH. Okay, so what I'm drawing on the board, they will stop texting me so I can see. I don't know if any of you are going to end up taking organic or biochemistry. But what I'm drawing on the board right now, and I can't see it online, obviously, it is a glucose molecule. One, two, three, four, five, six. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. Okay, so what I drew on the board is the way that glucose looks, if you actually looked it up. And when we did the carbon cycle, it's not the energy in the carbon, it's the energy that's between the bonds. Glucose provides a whole bunch of energy because they're all single bonds, except for, well, that guy's got 1 pairs of electrons on it. And when you break the bond, okay, so when you eat food, it's a sugar, as you're digesting it, the bacteria is helping you digest your food. When it breaks these bonds, that's what provides the energy for us. And there's other types of fuel. It's the one I know how to draw on. I cheated, looked it up online. Electricity, though, you can't create electricity unless you're harnessing energy from some other source. So it's a secondary type of energy. And this is, I don't want to say it's necessarily a problem, but we're drenched with electricity. We're completely and totally dependent, almost addicted, if you will, to electricity. We have to find ways to create more of it because we keep using more of it. Plus, we keep having more kids and there's more humans. So that's the issue. Most of, and I don't even know if it's on this slide or if it's on the stuff that we're doing Monday, because the next section that we're doing is comparing the renewable versus the non-renewable. And the ones that we're talking about today are the non-renewable ones, at least the fossil fuel version. There are other non-renewables besides fossil fuels. This is essentially what a coal plant does. Most of the energy in our country does come from burning coal. It's plentiful, it packs a heck of a lot of energy, and it's really easy to transport. Okay? You don't have to keep it in what they're called bombs, not like bombs, but the containers that we keep gases in. You don't have to do that like you do with natural gas. It's not going to just spill everywhere like the way oil does. It's very, very, very easy to transport. They do it in those gigantic train cars. It looks like it's got like little, like, same thing they transport grain. Have like these, I don't know what they're called, but thing that you crack open and all the coal comes out on the bottom. But when we burn stuff, it goes through something called combustion. We are combustion engines too. Obviously, we're not catching on fire. Okay, but when you eat something, if you've never noticed, 2 things happen. 1, your heart rate goes up, and 2, you get hotter. Not by a whole bunch, but you're literally combusting your food. Let's see. Okay, it is on this one. Most of our electricity and it is shifting. Okay, we're getting more green ways to make energy. But most of the current electrical load that this country uses comes specifically from coal. Easy to move, cheap, and packs a big punch. Now, fossil fuels in general come from things that were once alive. Specifically, coal comes from the swampy plants, from the Carboniferous age. Carboniferous, some old plants were there, specifically the Pennsylvanian and the Mississippian, but that was then. Do I have one more on here? I don't remember. Yes, there's one more on here. Your oil and your natural gas primarily do come from sea life that has been compacted. They are hydrocarbons. I put some more, like this is methane. This is the simplest of them all. I don't know all of them off the top of my head. I don't here, I'll look at propane. I don't remember benzene, butadiene. I don't remember any of those. Propane. C3H8. I don't remember any of their structures either. If you go off to take organic and biochem, you get to draw all these puppies out like this. But they're not all 6 is hexa, right? They're not all hexagons like this is. And they're the most common of our non-renewable energy sources. There are other non-renewables that are not fossil fuels, like uranium, nuclear power plants. So everything originally started with the energy from the sun. The sun's shining, allows the plants to do photosynthesis. Plants bring up the nitrogen, starts growing tissue, but without the sun, you didn't have the original organisms, whether it be the plants themselves or it be things that eat the photosynthetic life. So the energy from the sun is essentially stored in their tissue. And I don't care if it's a plant or if it's an animal. It's stored in our tissue. And then when they die, they turn into whichever of the fossil fuel that they're going to turn into, coal, oil, gas. And then when we burn it, we're releasing the energy that was trapped originally hundreds of millions of years ago by these organisms from the sun. So really the ultimate source for everything that exists, period, is stars. And for us specifically is our sun. Now, the stuff that made our star came from somewhere else. But if we're talking about recently, within the last 4 to 5 billion years, that's where it comes from. The issues, and I did split off greenhouse gases and pollution. Pollution's actually pretty short and really easy. The air pollution, the water pollution, and the land pollution, soil, same thing. That's the big issue with burning these fossil fuels. And some are a lot dirtier than others. Coal's pretty dang dirty. The cleanest of the fossil fuels is actually natural gas. I don't know if any of you guys have like a gas stove at home. I miss having gas. I really do. But that would be the cleanest of all of the natural, I'm sorry, not natural gases, your fossil fuels. Oh, there was one more. So the big thing that we've been talking about is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is not the only greenhouse gas. Carbon dioxide is actually nowhere near as prevalent as the other ones. But this is the thing that keeps getting focused on. This carbon dioxide production is what all of the legislation and whatnot's been being thrown at us since when we start doing all that stuff, 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when we started realizing that we were putting a lot more of that into the atmosphere than we should. Still only 0.036% of our air, but so millions of years, it's really somewhere between 100 and 400 million years is going to be the time frame, depending on which type of fossil fuel we're talking about. Now, when I started pulling these charts off to figure out like how much of our energy grid is from each source, I keep getting conflicting information, and I think it's just how old were the charts that I pulled. But according to this one, and I have a couple of conflicting pages, it says 86%. At the time that this was compiled, 86% of our country's use is fossil fuels, whether it be coal, oil, or natural gas. And we do still have, so in you have nuclear, right? And then renewable would be things like wind, solar, water power. I know I'm forgetting something. I know there's others that are in there. But this push, the renewable energy, specifically solar and wind, that's where we're seeing a big shift in the energy production. And when I do the stuff on Monday, like 70% of the increase of our electric load is going to come from those two things. It's still going to come from the other ones too, but the biggest change to be able to supply the horrendous demand that this country has for electricity is going to come from those two. And we'll talk more about renewable things on Monday. So coal comes specifically from those swampy plants, okay, from like before the dinosaurs, okay. I actually had a kid in one of my classes ask, or actually didn't ask, when I say, gosh, it was a while ago, where did like the oil come from? Somebody seriously told me dinosaur blood, and I was like, no. If you have what's called a deposit, and I don't know where all the deposits of coal are, I know that Pennsylvania's got one, a big one. That's the anthracite. That's the harder coal that burns longer. I don't know where the other one is. The softer one, like what you think of as charcoal. I don't know where that one's from. But somewhere from 100 to 400 million years ago, and it comes from the plants that were in the swamps. Now, y'all remember, there was no ice at this time. There are cold reserves in Antarctica. There are cold reserves in Siberia because they weren't frozen then. The entire planet was essentially a hothouse. Can't stop. I don't even have any cough drops. Ooh, my face just got red. I don't have any cough drops. Okay, so of the three major types of fossil fuels, like I said, natural gas, if you have a gas oven, the stuff that provides that, that's going to be the cleanest of them. Propane is different. Propane is actually manufactured from a combination of petrol and natural gas. Propane is fairly clean as well. I think some of you may have those big propane tanks. I think to get one so I can get a generator. So natural gas, this is methane. There are other hydrocarbons that are in there. I don't work in a refinery. My husband used to. He'd probably be able to explain all of this way better than I could. The way that these things are created. He worked for ExxonMobil, and they made all different kinds of crazy stuff in the refinery. Really bad cancer agent, kind of like the butadienes. Those people make a heck of a lot of money. Really dangerous, though, especially for the operators. But natural gas, like I said, is the cleanest of the three. It's, for you guys, if you were around it, it's primarily a cooking thing. We do use it to help spin the turbines and then store it to be able to create electricity. I didn't really go into how it's collected in any of these. But basically, whatever it is that you're using to harness electricity, eventually it's either going to store it in a battery, which is the way solar works, or it's going to spin a turbine. Wind does that, water does that, nuclear does that, carbon, like fossil fuel burning does that. Spins a turbine, and then that is stored in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully you guys have learned how a nuclear power plant works before. All right, so natural gas. The only thing that's really bad about it, besides the fact it has to be contained, or it's gonna go away, is the fact that it is extremely flammable. Obviously, all three of them are flammable because we burn them, but of the three, the most dangerous are going to be the gaseous versions. They're much easier to ignite. And propane, even though propane is not natural gas, it's a derivative of natural gas. It's the same way. And every now and then you hear of, seems like it's always in the north, like in Chicago, where you have a natural gas explosion and it like takes out a block. It's some pretty nasty stuff when it escapes. Petrol. Petroleum is just another word for oil, so that's sort of redundant. You're gonna find oil primarily in limestone or sandstone. Okay, so where we mine for oil and we drill down is going to be normally in coastal areas. Okay, that's why we put the oil rigs off the coast of Louisiana and like Texas. That's where we find our oil. We only have 3% of the world's supply, but we consume a third of the world's oil. We are a very electrical hungry country. And with oil, a big part of our consumption, this is what's used to make gasoline, okay, and like kerosene, which you probably don't even know what kerosene is. We consume a bunch of it, a whole bunch of it. Like I said, oil comes from sea life primarily, not plants. The animals. I guess algae. Is algae considered a plant or bacteria? Is it? I know it's photosynthetic. Let's see. Here. Algae. It's algae plant. Okay, algae are in the plant kingdom, but technically they are not plants. They do not have roots or true stems and leaves. So then, that didn't really answer my question, Paul. It's in the plant family, but it's not considered a plant. What kind of answer is that?
Schrodinger's
Okay. Tell me what it is. It's its own thing. Okay, I just read that whole article and it did not answer my question. Okay, so like I said, our big consumption for oil, I mean, obviously we use oil for various things. We use oils, lubricants, and honestly, even your renewable things like wind and solar, to build the machines, you need fossil fuels. You need primarily oil. That was part of the problem with the wind turbines that froze, is they were not weatherized. And so, like, I don't know how much you guys know how cars work. You have to put oil in your engine or you're going to seize the pistons and then it's gonna, yeah, that's not good. You get a whole new engine block. But the oil that you put in has a different weight. Okay, so there's like 10W30, there's some that are W40s, there's 5s. And depending on how cold it is outside, it actually is supposed to determine what type of oil you have. Now, synthetic oil, I'm talking about like conventional oil. Synthetic oil is a little bit different. But you still need oil to lubricate the machines or they don't work anymore. All right, when we first yank it out, it's called crude. Okay, if you've ever seen like movies where they dig down, all of a sudden it's like a big gush of really thick, nasty black oil. That's not in the usable stage for us. It has to be processed in a refinery in some way, shape, or form. But the oil, like I said, my husband will be able to explain this so much more because he did all of this. He worked in the lab and he was also an analyzer tech. He wasn't an operator. Propane, like I said, is a mixture of gas and oil. Petrol is just another word for oil. And the problem is they're not going to last forever. And they take hundreds of millions of years to create. I don't know about synthetic oil. I didn't look that up, like Mobile One. There are synthetics. I don't know how that's made. I didn't even remotely think to look at that when I was building this. But yeah, and the next slide, which I believe is the last one, today's really short. How long are they going to last with current consumption? And it really isn't that long, which is one of the reasons why we are having such a push towards the solar and for wind. You're still not going to get as much energy out as you would say coal and oil, but they're just not going to be around forever. And so, once again, fossil fuels take a long, long, long time to be created. That's why they are considered non-renewable. So there are other non-renewable besides fossil fuels. We'll cover those on Monday, like nuclear power. And this just sort of like leads into what we're doing on Monday. We got to figure out what the heck we're doing, or we're not going to have the electrical capabilities that we have now. We're going to have to deal without. We're going to have things like rolling blackouts. Oil, this is what sort of terrifies me. Now, I don't know when this was compiled. I didn't look at the timestamp on the image they yanked off the internet. But when this was put together, according to current consumption, when this was taken, gasoline, yeah, another 40 years. According to this, unless we find new like dig new wells and pull out more oil, but with current known reserves, the longest thing that we're going to have is coal. Well, yeah, by the time that happens, according to this, oil, according to this, and possibly gas. Not in my lifetime. I'm not going to live to be 100 years old. There's no way. I might live to be in my 80s, maybe. So I might see, according to this, the end of gasoline, because that's where it comes from. I'm not going to see the end of natural gas. I'm definitely not going to see the end of coal. Our consumption, now this was a while ago, so 2004, so you can like way up this, but the United States consumes more than anything else. The next is going to see, it's not even the European Union anymore because it broke up. This data is a little old. So considering the population of India, that just sort of explains to you how undeveloped the bulk of that country is. Japan has a rather large population. They like to walk everywhere in Japan, though. So that just sort of puts it in perspective how much we really do use. And like I said, I don't know how long ago that was compiled. I'm gonna have to look that up and double check it. If you did not do the stuff on the nitrogen cycle, that's what you should do now, because I am pulling those and putting those in the grade book. If you're all caught up, then you can, allergies, then you can work on this one, because we still have, what, 15 minutes? Oh, this can be a long day. I'm going to watch my blow my nose. I'm happy. Let me start this.